Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we are continuing with our training program, online training program for our life coach based on our book Positive Islamic Psychology, a transcendent model to achieve peace, happiness and success in the 21st century. And also a subsequent book that we're going to write on based on our life coach training. Inshallah, when this whole project is completed, you will have another e-books. This book, inshallah, will upload on our islamic-psychology.net. You can download this book and our summary of this book as well as the Indonesian version shortly, inshallah, when we have completed a few more of the revision that we are doing. Alright, so we have mentioned in the early videos the challenges that all Muslims must understand, especially our youth, and to be a life coach in the context of Islamic da'wah or Islamic work to help yourself, your family, your local community, your mosque, as well as globally reframe the whole idea of Islam as Rahmatul Alameen. It's very important for us to actually have some basic idea of the challenges. So I have summarized these challenges into 8 challenges which we have mentioned. We have discussed on the challenges of atheism, why this is the greatest challenge in the 21st century, because this is the dominant worldview of the scientific community. So they are forcing this worldview into our young people, and because we do not have the necessary defense, we will just fall into their trap. So it's important for us to be able to defend our belief in Allah, which is very rational, very scientific, and we can actually challenge this whole fallacy of atheism. We have discussed on the nature of anxiety and youth quite deeply, as well as the depression and youth, and now we have this ever-growing trend of suicide in youth. So young people are killing themselves, especially in rich countries, but it is slowly spreading to other countries, and Muslims, like it or not, over the next 10-20 years will have to face. So we have young people growing up, for example Muslims growing up in America or in England or in Sweden, will be faced with the same similar situation unless we take remedial action to overcome the ideation of suicide. And apart from that, there are the challenges that we must know about will be the pornography addiction and youth, teenage pregnancy and youth, drug, alcohol addiction and youth, video game addiction, and other challenges. So these are the major frame that we are using as a basis of our life coach training for you to interact with the youth as well as the community in overcoming the challenges. So if we look at suicide and youth, this is a growing problem. Youth suicide is when a young person, generally categorized as someone below 21 years old, end their life. So they decide to end their life, whether they hang themselves or whether they shoot themselves in the head or whether they commit suicide by taking overdose of certain pills and so on. These are actually now becoming an epidemic throughout the OECD countries. All right. Suicide is a global problem, and is affecting many countries all over the world. Some culture, for example, the Japanese culture, sometimes glorify suicide. That's why suicide rate in Japan is very high, not only among youth but also among all elderly. So now there's a lot of elderly people killing themselves because they got no meaning and no purpose in life. Towards the end of life, they kill themselves. And this growing trend is already happening in America, in Australia, in Europe. A very, very severe problem. So we have youth suicide, we also have age suicide, people who are 60 years and above, who find no meaning. They're healthy, they're okay, but then they just decide one day that they don't want to exist on this earth and just kill themselves. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in the United States, starting with children at the age of 10 all the way up to the age of 33. So you can see, even 10 years old kid, because they see this kind of videos and drama and film showing this whole idea of suicide, they even have gory pictures where when they play the game they can even kill somebody and they kill themselves and so on. So it is quite normal to them and they think it's just a plaything. So 10 years old already you have this problem of suicide ideation. More teenagers and young people die from suicide than cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, stroke and other chronic diseases. So more and more of these young people are killing themselves. There is more than 5,200 suicide attempts by middle and high school children in USA. That means middle and high school youth in their early teens are just attempting to kill themselves. More children think about killing themselves than those who are actually attempted to suicide. So there is a lot what they call this suicide ideation. They idolize the whole idea that it's good to kill themselves, all right? Or it is something that is okay, it's nothing wrong to kill yourself, to commit suicide. So this is becoming a growing trend. So this is where you get from Dr. Daniel Dixon, and you can refer to a lot of these research papers, and you can find a lot of this material now, because this is becoming a globalized problem. So it may not have affected Muslim youth now, but they are already, we are already anecdotal cases where we find these people wanting to kill themselves, even in like a very so-called Islamic country in Malaysia. Every day we have 2 to 3 Muslim children or Muslim youth, both male and female, attempting to commit suicide. All right, so there are hotline, there are many areas to help out. But if you want to be a life coach, then you must be able to have some basic knowledge. So how to scientifically help them, how to actually reach out to them using Islamic approach, that means positive Islamic psychology methodology, and help them out professionally in a way that inshallah will be able to save their life. So I'll show you this short video, and inshallah you will then understand how we are going to help out our young people so that they do not end up killing themselves following the pattern of those people from the rich countries. Inshallah, Allah will save us and guide us and bring us to a better understanding of good values, good system of living within the context of this Dinul Islam, and always knowing that we are meaningful human beings living within the context of being the sincere servant of Allah, being His vicegerent, His Khalifa on this earth, always having the joy, the meaning, the purpose of life, always striving to make ourselves good, help others to be good, and make the world good, inshallah. So you can see the short video about this whole idea of this epidemic of suicide now.
A startling new report from the Centers for Disease Control. Researchers say teenage suicide is growing at an alarming rate. Since the year 2000, the suicide rate for teens is up 28%, with a startling average of 5 deaths a day. Jerika Duncan looks into what's behind the rising teen toll.
He was just an all-around great kid. He was an athlete.
Jennifer Gonzalez says her 17-year-old son, Jack Farrell, seemed fine last Thanksgiving.
And the next day I get woken up by the police knocking on my door saying I needed to come with them right away. I found out then that he shot himself in the head.
New CDC data shows suicide rates for boys like Farrell, age 15 to 19, increased more than 30%. 3 years ago, Conrad Roy died in this truck from carbon monoxide poisoning after his friend, Michelle Carter, encouraged him to commit suicide through dozens of text messages. In a highly publicized trial, we learned both teens suffered from mental illness. The CDC also says suicide rates for teenage girls are at a 40-year high. Experts cite family instability and substance abuse among some factors for suicide, but the role of cyberbullying is becoming more prevalent. In June, 12-year-old Mallory Grossman took her own life. Her mother, Diane, says it was because she was harassed in texts, on Snapchat, and Instagram.
In the beginning, it was teasing, it was name-calling, it was exclusion was an important part. You can't sit here, you're not welcome at this table.
Professor Jean Twenge is a psychologist at San Diego State University.
Teens are much more likely now than they were just 5 years ago or 7 years ago to say that they are anxious and depressed and thinking about suicide.
In a provocative new article for The Atlantic, Twenge makes a correlation between the popularity of smartphones and increased rates of suicide and depression among young people.
Teens who use electronic devices more hours a day are more likely to be at risk for suicide.
Researchers say the so-called smartphone generation is less likely to have face-to-face interaction with friends, which they say is crucial for mental health and for building social skills.